procedures, the guidelines, the protocols, and the standards that will be driven by the technology. I think that African universities in the new normal will need to address a number of quality assurance issues related to the following. One, the educational program development, deployment, and delivery. Some universities will need to completely develop their programs to suit the new normal, and this has quality assurance implications. Two, learning facilitation, administration of the learning process, and the monitoring of the learning process. To have only 3 people quality assurance and monitoring system, but when we went the COVID experience, we increased that to 12 people. So which shows that monitoring and administering learning facilitation online requires a bigger team, and that has a lot of quality assurance implications. 3, assessment. My colleague from UNISA made a point. The development, the delivering, administering, and monitoring of assessment is something which is now a big deal in the new environment. Well, we all be giving face-to-face campus exams. In the online, we found out that we have to redesign our whole what they call exam paper. I can recall the day that we had a shutdown in Ghana, our mid-semester exam in our campus-based university. We have all our mid-semester papers ready to do an exam for 2 weeks, and then we shut down. What did we do? We went back to protocol guidelines about how to write open book exams for the first time. Again, that is an example of new guidelines that you need. Number 4, engagement and interaction. This is big time. This is faculty to learner interaction, academic administration to learner interaction, academic administration to faculty interaction, learner to learner interaction, and of course, faculty to faculty interaction. All these have actually bring it to fore that even engagement and interaction do have quality assurance implication. The next thing, the student life cycle facilitation and support. Now, we're all preparing for the new semester. There are a lot of student life cycle issues, recruitment of students, enrollment of students. The new COVID period, the whole formula have changed. So supporting the entire student life activities is also something we need to look at in the new normal. And of course, engagement with parents and alumni. So for us, to address and support all these cross-cut issues that encompass all aspects of the new normal delivery of programs, we think African universities, like those in other parts of the world, would need to put in place and implement new, revamped, and enhanced quality assurance management systems, quality assurance procedures, quality assurance guidelines, quality assurance protocols, and of course, quality assurance standards. In order to facilitate their educational program delivery, development, and deployment, their facilitation, assessment, engagement and interaction, student life cycle, and so forth. All those things are quite crucial in the new normal. So certainly, we think that we at AIT, we have gone through the cycle. For us, it's still in progress. We are seriously thinking that even when we come back, we hope when we come back in September, we are still going on protocol about how engagement must happen among all the stakeholders in the university. And of course, we have a number of other protocols. So the short version of my presentation is that we are entering a new normal. A new normal which states that what brought us here will not be there. A lot of things must be done. Even universities who have been teaching online will need to revamp things. Even faculty skills. I'm sure my colleague who is going to talk about and skills will actually touch on that. We have to do a whole lot of retraining of our faculty in order to deliver online. So the long and short is that infrastructure, systems, resources, guidelines, people, and all those things are quality assurance implications, and we need to look at it if we are going to survive in the new normal. Thank you.
Hey, so this is Dishant from Unica University Common Application. I recommend you to watch AAU television.
AAU TV is the place to be for every person in higher education in Africa. Better be there or be nowhere.
Continuez et surtout sur le AAU. Keep watching it. and it will change the way you interact with higher education on the continent. AAU
is interested in higher education in Africa.
When I was in Accra last year, I did an interview on this TV. It's a very important mouthpiece.
It's a data, it's a bank of all we need for the development of higher education in Africa.
People should make an effort to view it because it discusses very current issues of development across the continent.
I believe that the station
has a lot of information to a broader audience. So we wish you all the best and please continue serving AAU.
This season we are celebrating academic mentors. In simple terms, the AAU TV cameras are scouting Africa to look for the academic icons, to interview them and to know more about their life stories. Please follow us on all social media outlets. Google Association of African Universities on Facebook and on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter at AAU_67. Today we have a great personality to kickstart our maiden edition of Impact Stories. But before I introduce him, let's go for a very short commercial break.
Accra Institute of Technology is a top-ranked private technology university in Ghana. The university offers world-class bachelor's, master's, and PhD degree programs.
We are AIT, the University of the Future.
Hello and welcome back to Impact Stories on AAU Television. AAU, the voice of higher education in Africa. As I mentioned before the break, we are celebrating an academic icon who is not only a household name, but has made it big on the international higher education front. He was born on 24th of March, 1939. And by our calculation, he's nearing his 80th birthday. He has been a fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. And indeed, he was the immediate past president. Besides his impressive academic panion of the Order of the Volta by the Republic of Ghana. Our guest also served as a member of the Council of State of the Republic of Ghana from 2009 to 2013. Distinguished viewers, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Professor Akilapa Sawyer.
You on the setting up of AAU television, which I think is a fantastic idea.
Thank you.
And I'm proud to be part of the process of taking it forward.
Thank you very much, Prof. That's very relieving of you to say this to us. You have been a former Secretary General of the AAU, and it's always good to hear from you. And I recall the last time I actually saw you in public, it was about 2 weeks ago, and the applause was such a huge applause. Yes. so we want to, even the pronunciation.
Right, and the spelling.
And the spelling.
Yeah.
Some say Akilapa, and then the Sawyer comes with a double R.
That's right.
So can you please take us through the Sawyer family tree?
Very, very briefly, my grandfather on the father's side was actually from Sierra Leone. But he grew up in the time when there was a British colony of West Africa. And the Sierra Leonean educated people were used by the British all along the coast through what is now Ghana, through Nigeria, back in. So part of my roots go back to Abeokuta in Nigeria, but also Sierra Leone.
Really?
Very much so. More than that, I'm a global Pan-African.
What is that, Prof?
Because the Sawyer is from the slave origins. apparently my forebears were part of the released slaves from Canada who came back to settle in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and came with the soil name from there.
Okay. No, I can't. Thank you very much.
I didn't.
You were born in Ghana?
Yeah, I was born in Ghana. I lived in Ghana. I've been to Nigeria and Sierra Leone.
Okay.
But I never spent time there. My family is there in Sierra Leone.
Okay.
The family.
All right. Yes. Okay. So, Prof, can you tell us a little bit about your schooling days, your pre-university schooling days in Ghana?
Yes. Well, I went to government school. I went to, from there, I went to what is now senior high school, which was then, I suppose, middle school.
Yes.
Then to
Still at Kimbu?
No. That was at Kimbu.
At Kimbu?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what it is now. It was Kimbu then.
Yes.
Then off to Achimota in 1952.
Wow.
And of course, I spent 7 years there, did my A-levels before going abroad to a professional work.
So you spent 7 years at Achimota School?
Yes, 52 to 59.
Okay.
I did my O-levels in 56 and actually 58, I beg your pardon.
Okay.
And then my A-levels in 58.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a normal span, 7 years.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your school days at Achimota School?
Very interesting period.
Okay.
Looking back now, what stands out was the quality of the half or more from the UK.
Okay.
The UK public school system.
Okay.
What they call public school in those days. Who brought to the then Gold Coast the idea of a very rounded education.
Okay.
So while we were covering in the curriculum things like Greek literature and history, we were also involved in farming, in woodwork, in and so on. In other words, it was a very rounded education, but also in sports, very, very much.
Oh, that made you a complete person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and in those days, everybody had to play almost all sports, even the ones who were not very good.
Really?
You had to swim, you had to play volleyball, you had to play soccer, you had to play everything. Of course, the best one on the team. But everybody did some sports.
Prof, I'll come to your sporting days. Wow. So, okay.
He was my form mate right through from Form 1 to Form 7, a very close friend.
Wow.
There was a Jackson, I don't know if you know, also Jackson, who was the Bank of Ghana.
No.
Quite a few names like that, you know.
Okay.
Were mates of mine at the time.
Did you pick any leadership position at school?
I was such a naughty boy.
Oh my goodness.
In fact,
no, we don't believe that.
I'm telling you, I remember my housemaster was so fed up with me that he told me I would end up in prison.
Oh my goodness. He did.
Well, so far I haven't been in prison yet, but there's still time. But Mr. Allen was very clear that given how naughty I was, I would end up on the wrong side of the law.
So you still remember his name?
Very much.
I hope you have forgiven him.
Well, I laughed at him.
You did?
Even then, you know. No, I was very naughty. So I was appointed to a position only in my final year as a dormitory monitor.
Dormitory monitor.
Yeah, which was, I suppose, a reluctant by the authorities, you know, all right, have something, you too, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was very much a rebel.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
You don't look like one. Well, okay, Prof. Yeah. So in your school days, what were your career ambitions?
Right.
And what really motivated you to aspire for such careers?
I suppose to the degree that there was any proper ambition, it was to be a lawyer like my father was.
Oh, okay.
It was a vague idea. The whole family thought I'll be the lawyer of the family and so on. So I had vague ideas about doing law at some point. But of course, it was very much a child's dream at the time. You know. But that was my main drive.
Okay. Now, were there other careers during the pre-independent and immediate post-independent era?
I suppose, looking back, the main prospects would have been in the public service or the professions, in particular law and medicine.
Okay.
Things like engineering came along later. They were not quite,
Really?
not at the time.
So where were we getting the engineers?
From outside, mostly.
Okay.
There were a few local engineers. There were some. But the ambition of young people was not to be an engineer, but to be a public servant, or even in the commercial sector, and so on, but also the professions.
Okay.
Mine was to be a lawyer because my family had this record of legal work. Yes.
Okay. Wow, that's very good to know. Okay. Then when you left Achimota, why did you not continue your education in Ghana, but you went to King's College, University of Durham?
Right. A very interesting story there, and it shows the ways in which people's lives can change like that. I had, at the end of my secondary school career, applied to go to the University of Ghana to do history and been accepted.
Prof, hold on. You wanted to read law.
Right.
But then you applied to do history.
Right.
I don't see the connection.
Precisely. Because at the time, there was no law faculty at the time in Ghana.
Okay.
The law faculty began the year after I left.
Wow.
So there was no law faculty here. So I kept on the normal academic work, go to do history. Why did I go and do law instead of history? Interesting. My mother, who of course was a widow at the time, was talking to one of the tenants of our property, who asked, "How's your son doing? What is he up to?" And she said, "Well, he's just done his A-levels, done very well. He wants to go and do law, but with no money, so he has to go to Legon." And this tenant, a foreigner at the time, said, "Well, we owe you rent, so we are prepared to advance the money for his education abroad and take it from the rent."
That's a generous offer.
Amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. So, and this was late in the year. You apply for a university place in the UK at least a year in advance.
Okay.
I was applying almost at the end of that period. So my choice of university was very limited.
Very, very.
My sister was in the UK at the time and luckily got Durham. King's College, Durham for me.
Wow.
But it turns out, interestingly, that my father's law degree was also from Durham.
Wow.
Because he took his law degree in Forabe College in Sierra Leone. And in those days, Forabe awarded Durham degrees. So my father was LLB Durham, and guess what? So was I.
Wow, the tradition goes on.
Totally accidentally, but straight up the line.
Yes. So I believe your son too went to Durham.
No, he didn't. he was wiser. He went somewhere else.
Oh, okay. No. Okay. Then let me ask, did you actually have a mentor during your pre-university days before you went to Durham?
No.
No?
No. No. But my mother was a pillar of strength.
Okay.
Quiet, determined to make sure everything worked. So that was my main support, my mother.
Prof, after your first degree in 1962, you had your Barrister of Law degree, or?
No.
Barrister at Law.
That's right. That was the English bar.
That's the English bar?
Yes.
But you could practice in Ghana and in London?
No. The English bar qualification entitled me to practice in the UK, in England actually, only. But at the time, if you had got an English bar qualification, you could apply to the Ghana Bar Association to be registered to practice law in Ghana. So I had to come to Ghana and get registered for the bar in Ghana as well. So there were two separate activities.
Okay.
Yes.
So did you ever practice in Ghana, in a chamber?
No. I was never a practitioner in the sense of making a living from practice. I was a law lecturer, but of course the courts at that time used to invite people like me pro bono to represent unrepresented clients. Usually convicts who've been convicted but had no lawyers who were called in to defend. So I did quite a bit of that. And in the end of my career, in the last 5 years, I was heading a law firm which belonged to my cousin who died, and I took over. So that was my nearest to practice.
Wow.
And of course, I was also attending court occasionally in Papua New Guinea and Tanzania, but never a full-time position.
Okay. You did your bachelor's and master's in Durham. Then you went to do another master's.
Yes.
Why 2 masters for a young, and well-established person like you?
Exactly. Interesting. I did my first degree in Durham and my second degree, the master's, in London.
Okay.
Yes. Now, that was done because while I was doing the bar in London, the bar, I had to, first of all, what they call eat dinners for 3 years. Right? I used to come by train from Durham to London to spend a weekend in Lincoln's Inn with the judges and so on, eating dinner and so on, as qualifying criteria for getting the bar. At the end of that period, you then have to do exams. So I had to come to London for that, for a year. And in that year, I began the master's because I was in London anyway. And I got the degree of Master of Law, but also the barrister as well.
Okay.
Now, then I took a job in Tanzania. And there was a program which, I forget the name now, offered a 1-year grant to lecturers to spend a year abroad in the US. Yes. I'd never been to the US, so I said, wow, why don't I take the chance of this offer? But that scholarship arrangement required that you do a degree while you are
the US.
In the US.
Okay.
So I wrote to my, literally I looked at the most important academic in the area I was specializing in. From his books. I wrote direct to him. Can I come and study with you? And he said, yes, come.
Wow.
In Berkeley. He was the most famous scholar at the time in his field. It was called Albert Ehrenschweig.
Okay.
So I spent a year at Berkeley on this grant, but I had to do a degree. So I killed time literally in doing the master's degree during that period. It wasn't something I needed.
So at the age of 28, you had 2 masters.
That's right.
Congratulations. It's no mean achievement.
Now it's quite common, I'm sure, yeah.
Yes, but not at the age of 28.
No, that's true.
So you are still a trailblazer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Prof, now we're coming back to, you said that you were quite stubborn at school.
Yes.
Were you a student activist?
Very much. Very much. Unfortunately, at the secondary school level, we weren't organized.
Okay.
So once activism showed in almost individual rebellions against authority.
Okay.
At the time, authority was not the headmaster or even the teacher. It was often your hall authorities, your colleague students.
Decentralization started from there.
Quite literally.
Okay.
So that the monitor was the boss of the dormitory. And of course, they were often quite authoritarian.
The monitors.
The monitors.
And you became a monitor
after.
Later.
That was a joke of it, you know. But they controlled us, and they were very authoritarian. I was a complete rebel against them. And they reported to the housemaster. So when the housemaster said I would go to prison, it was based on reports he'd received
from the
monitors.
Wow.
He didn't know me himself. But essentially, that was the nature of my rebellion. I mean, let me give you an example of that.
Okay.
At one point, the school decided that they had a school belt, and everyone should wear the school belt. I didn't like the belt.
The color of it?
I didn't know the color of it was one of these elastic things, so I didn't wear it. You couldn't wear another belt, so I had no belt. So I wore my shorts down here like they do these days in protest. Like my pants were always falling off. I refused to wear the belt, you know, for years. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Protesting against authoritarian dictation from authority, whichever.
That's interesting. And then politically too, I know you are an Nkrumahist.
Yes. Well, that came much later.
Okay.
It's an interesting evolution.
Okay.
At the time I was in Ghana, and we are talking now about the immediate post-independence period.
Okay. I thought your rebellious nature was the way it was derived from how Nkrumah rebelled against the UGCC.
No.
Okay.
At the time, it was completely apolitical.
Okay.
I was very much in favor of the independence movement and so on. But it wasn't really something I took personally directly at the time.
Okay.
It was much later that I became much more politically active at that level. Much later.
Okay. And so what is the philosophy of Nkrumahism?
Well, you know, to tell the truth, I have never been an ideologue of Nkrumahism as such.
Okay.
My concern with the Nkrumah phenomenon is what Nkrumah represented.
Okay.
Not himself personally or his ideas personally, but what he represented. Long story short, he was concerned for the true liberation of our people. Not just independence, but the assumption of control over our affairs across the continent and the black world. It wasn't just a wish, but he thought about it.
He did.
He learned about it. And actually practiced it.
Wow.
So he was one of the very few people who, from our history, combined the correct objectives with deep thinking about the objective and consistent pursuit of the practice.
Wow.
And that's what I think is worth looking at.
Okay.
But of course, at the same time, some of the policies he introduced, had we kept on with them and improved them, where we are now.
Hi, viewers, it's becoming very interesting. We shall go for a short break, and when we come back, we shall look at Professor Sawyer in his days after school.
Are you an institution or individual? Do you intend to organize a memorable event to be archived for future reference? Then look no further than AAU Studios, because it's your best bet. With our spacious studio and state-of-the-art media equipment such as 4K Panasonic video cameras, KinoFlow lights, assorted microphones, live streaming machines and others, you are sure to get the best of production. Visit us at Trinity Avenue, East Legon, adjacent the National Accreditation Board, or contact the AAU Studio via the following addresses: info@aau.org, AAUTV@aau.org, Ransford@aau.org. Alternatively, you can call us on 0244 185 998 or +233 24 473 6280.
Okay, viewers, welcome back. We are interviewing Professor Akilakpa Sawyer, who is featuring on AAU Impact Stories. Prof, before the break, we were talking about your life before school and then during your certification days. Now we are going to talk about your work.
Okay.
It looked like your first major work environment was at University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that? And why not back in Ghana?
Interesting background to that. During the period of my scholarship for the master's degree, you remember I was saying that my first degree was family funded.
Yes.
But I got a government scholarship for the second degree in London. And so the normal deal was that at the end of that, I come back to the University of Ghana.
Okay.
So I applied to come back to the University of Ghana and waited and waited and waited and waited.
Prof, why? Was there bureaucracy or?
I just waited. No response to my application. Towards the end of my degree period, my supervisor said, well, look, there's this offer from Dar es Salaam.
Okay.
Why don't you just write to them and see what comes out? So I wrote to them, the law school, which was then in its first year.
Okay.
And got back a reply quickly, got back an appointment very quickly. I accepted it. I was ready to go to Dar es Salaam. Then comes the Legon offer. Too late.
Too late.
Too late. So I went off to Dar es Salaam to begin my career.
So were you a pioneering lecturer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In a sense, my group of lecturers were the ones who were the first sort of graduates.
Okay.
The university began 2 years before my getting there.
Okay.
So they graduated in that year.
All right.
So we were the first lot, yes.
And then when you were there, you were an editor or an associate editor of the East African Law Journal and the East African Law Review.
Yes.
Were they two separate journals?
They were.
Okay.
They were. It's a very interesting situation because here was a brand new law faculty.
Okay.
And it was a faculty for the whole of East Africa, not just Tanzania.
Oh, right.
And here were these very young lecturers. All of us were young.
Okay.
Beginning a law school tradition in this area. So within 4 or 5 years, we had to do a number of things, including establishing an academic tradition.
Okay.
And we felt that it was all well and good to publish in foreign journals.
Okay.
Why don't we have our own? So we began to develop the two journals. Exactly. And that was what I mean, believe it or not, in my 3rd year of academic work, I was the associate editor of the journal. That shows you what I'm talking about.
Exactly. May I ask, was there press freedom in Eastern Africa by then?
Yes.
There was?
Yes. Huge press freedom at the time. In fact, Tanzania was exceptional.
All right.
Because President Nyerere, as you recall, was himself a scholar.
All right.
And so he gave the university free rein.
All right.
And it's a very interesting period because the government and the party were looking for ways of strengthening the socialist base of the country. And they were open to anybody with ideas to help. Foreigners, local people, whoever. So all of us were involved very much, not just in academic work, but also in public political work at the time. And many of us learned the rudiments of political economy. As part of that process. In other words, my political thinking almost begun, certainly matured during my 6 years in Dar es Salaam. It wasn't just me, all the young ones who came from wherever. There were Peace Corps volunteers, there were QSO from Canada, they were from all over. It was a center for not just Tanzanians or West Africans. We are students from Malawi, students from Ethiopia, from Mozambique. An amazing African culture. That was my luck, that I began my career as a young person in that situation.
And then you couldn't stay. You came back to Ghana.
Right.
In 1970?
1970, yes.
I thought you were going to spend your life in Tanzania.
Well, I had a wonderful time and I enjoyed it very much, but home was home.
So what brought you home?
Home because I had always felt that I had left my family in 59. And although I came back occasionally, I still missed my family very much. So at the end of 6 years, I thought I should come back home. So I did.
You did.
Back to my old
school,
faculty.
The faculty of law. And then you stayed there for 9 years.
Yes.
Up to 79.
That's right. Yes.
And then you ran away to one of the most rural countries ever.
Absolutely.
That we ever know of.
Absolutely incredible place.
That is Papua New Guinea.
Absolutely. Yes.
All the way across the ocean.
Yes, right.
Indian Ocean.
Yes.
Prof, why Papua New Guinea of all places?
Again, it's a very interesting story. Back to the issue of how history moves in different ways. I was at the University of Ghana during the 1970s.
Yes.
Their champion years. Incredible political activity, incredible everything. As you know, academics are entitled to a sabbatical.
Yes.
After 7 years of teaching. So I was due for a sabbatical. But we were so involved in the political campaigns of the period that I chose not to move and stayed on. By 1978, things were settling down. You remember what happened in 79 and so on.
Yes.
I had applied for different jobs elsewhere. I had appointments in Kenya and Zambia.
Okay.
Then the old dean who had worked with me in Dar es Salaam wrote to me from Papua New Guinea, where he'd been acting as dean for some time.
Okay.
Inviting me over. I had actually agreed to go to, I think, Zambia.
Okay.
Then comes this letter from Papua New Guinea.
Yes.
Off I went.
Would you have gone if you had known the place before?
Oh, yes.
You would have gone?
Yes. Yes.
That was challenging.
Absolutely, and it was an amazing experience.
Wow.
Because it was quite unlike anything else I've been
really
come across. Absolutely.
Very culturally diverse.
Very much so. And at the time, Papua New Guinea was emerging from, how do you call it? Well, put it this way, it was an amazing society because it had within it people who were living a Stone Age existence, literally. At the same time, people who were also living in the space age.
Wow. Two extreme worlds.
Absolutely incredible contrast.
Wow.
I think it is still that way now, but at the time it was really incredibly diverse. So the students we had, some of them came from that background. It was part of the work of the university to move all of us on.
Okay.
From there up to space age.
Okay.
And it is for me a blessing.
Okay.
Because all my teaching work outside Ghana added to my understanding of life and my knowledge. So I learned from the living experience in those different environments. And so when I spend time in Ghana, it is an accumulation of experience from other countries.
Other places.
Yeah.
Then from Papua New Guinea, you came back to Ghana.
Oh yes, indeed.
Back to your university.
Back to the University
I think
of
you
Ghana.
love University of Ghana.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic establishment, and I loved it.
Yes, one of the prestigious universities in
yes.
Africa.
Absolutely.
And you rose through the rank
Absolutely.
to become the Vice Chancellor at the age of 46.
That's right.
Prof,
Yep.
46 years.
Yep.
Then.
Yep. A small boy at the time.
A small boy.
Yeah.
Ah, incredible. Congratulations.
But it was again an amazing experience.
Okay.
Because Vice Chancellor, I mean, how was I prepared for that?
Yes.
No training, no experience, running anything on that scale.
But were you appointed or it was by election?
Appointed.
Okay.
Well, appointed after council had done their work and selected.
Okay.
It's a whole process for selection.
It's a process. Okay.
Yes. Yes. I wasn't even in the country. I was in Papua New Guinea. I wasn't even here. I didn't apply for the job.
You didn't?
No. They did a headhunt.
Okay.
Had a search party which selected people and so on. So that's how my name came up.
Were there competitors?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh, very big ones.
Wow.
Established names. I'm not going to mention them now.
No, don't.
Because in a sense, after my appointment, that was one of my problems.
Okay.
That I was seen by some as a new person, a young person coming to run all of us.
Wow.
I was seen also at the time as a friend of the PNDC government.
Oh, okay.
So there were those who were, shall we say, not crazy about my appointment.
Okay.
So apart from having to settle down and run a university, I had to manage these difficult circumstances as well. And that combination was not easy.
Yeah, so that brings me back to the next question actually. That how were you able to really handle both internal issues and then with pressures? Because I believe when we were Vice Chancellor, Ghana was under military regime.
Absolutely.
So how were you able to blend the two and then manage to, go two terms, if I'm not mistaken?
Absolutely.
Yes.
No, it's an amazing experience again that requires a long discussion.
Okay.
There was a military government.
Okay.
but one in which I had very good friends. It was still a military government with its own agenda and so on. The university at the time had a posture of opposition to government. And therefore there was, before I arrived...
The university, a posture against military government or just any government?
Well, against that government.
That government?
At the time.
Okay.
But let me add one more very interesting bit.
Okay.
That this government-university confrontation had got to a point before my arrival where the workers took over the university and occupied it for, I think, a year before my arrival.
Okay.
The story was recovered, I think, a year before my arrival, so my predecessor, who was acting, acted over a recovered university for 1 year before I was appointed.
All right.
So when I came back, the faculty was dispersed. Some of them had gone to Nigeria, abroad, and so on, including myself. The structures had been damaged and not maintained. So there was a real physical collapse of the university.
Okay.
At the same time, funding was limited. We received government subventions monthly in arrears. And often you spend the money, you go ask for it, it will give it to you, you get only half of it. Very difficult. So those were the broad background elements of the period. At the same time, there were serious student protests against everything, the government mainly.
Okay.
So we in the university administration were caught between the students and government.
The government, yeah.
So a very important part of our function was to keep the campus going.
Yes.
By allowing the students to express their views and carry on and so on without crossing the line.
That was a difficult thing to do.
Very difficult.
So how did you manage that?
I don't know.
Definitely there should be
but there were a number of things
in place.
No, looking back, there were a number of things we did right.
Okay.
One of them was to take on the university community, students, staff, workers, lecturers, everybody.
Okay.
As a community.
That's right.
But to understand the community so thoroughly and to get their trust so completely that when you are talking to anybody outside, government outside, you are speaking for the community.
Yeah.
On the one hand.
Okay.
At the same time, you want to make the community aware of the reality that with a military government in place, we can't have it all our way.
Exactly.
So I was caught in the middle, and therefore, to some extent, offended both sides.
Exactly.
But over a period, I think it became clear to everybody that that posture was the right one. So the students were able to operate on campus. They demonstrated. They did everything they had to do. Government had its way.
Yeah. Somehow.
Somehow.
Yes.
And the two kept going. But of course, there were collapses. There was a famous collapse which I'm sure you know about.
Prof, tell us.
A number of things built up.
Okay.
But at one stage, the students were publicly attacking the Minister of Education and therefore the government, publicly.
Yes.
And government didn't like that at all. So, and they were expecting us to control the students. Now, it wasn't easy.
It wasn't. That was 1992? Or before?
No, before that.
Before?
It must have been 80-something.
Oh, okay.
89, thereabouts.
Okay.
That was a famous period. I can't get the date right.
Okay.
So, although we're talking to government to understand the need to get the balance right, government announced on radio the university should close down at 7 p.m. on that day.
Goodness.
We were with them in the morning. They never told us that. Council chair, myself, and others, we came back to campus to hear the news of the closure.
And it was by
decree, by radio.
Decree.
And we had to empty the campus by the end of the day.
And where were the students going to have transportation back home?
Nobody cared. And you know, the police had lined up behind the police station across the road from us. We didn't know that till after the announcement, with the steel helmets and all that business. So, I don't know, at around, of course, when I came back and heard this, I called a meeting of the executive committee immediately.
Okay.
And asked everybody, let's not debate the rights or wrongs.
Yes.
Let's get the students off campus. How we do it, how we don't do it, let's do it.
Okay.
Everybody, go to any hall around and help out.
Mobilize, yeah.
First thing we did. By the time we finished the meeting, the police armored cars were on campus.
No, but I thought universities are kind of, you know, enclaves in themselves.
That's right. Not in those days.
Not in those days, under military rule.
Without discussion, without getting, normally, before you come on campus, you must get permission of the vice chancellor.
Exactly.
Or let's inform them.
Yes.
Nothing. They drove onto campus, and I can see the picture in my head now, literally. And they stopped just outside Volta Hall.
Wow.
And so Professor Bennett, who was then my deputy, my pro-vice chancellor.
Pro-vice.
And I literally went there physically, very politely, and stood at that circle with the commanders and the armored cars.
Prof, what were some of the transformational changes that you brought to the university?
Well, essentially, my first task, and when I say my first, I mean the team's first task, was to re-establish academic work on a normal basis after the previous years of closure and disturbance. But among the significant things that we did, I would mention the introduction of a more rational system of promotions.
Okay.
Because for a long time there had been very few promotions at the university when I took over.
Okay.
But also the requirements for promotion were unclear.
Okay.
So one of the things I introduced was a new arrangement which ensured that everybody who was a lecturer had the chance to rise to a lecturer level of senior lecturer.
Okay.
Mainly through the teaching ability and some research.
Okay.
But to go beyond that, you required research and publications in the old style.
Okay.
But the third point was to introduce a point beyond which you will not go.
Okay.
If you don't get promotion. So that if you rose to become a senior lecturer, you then have 3 years within which to qualify as an associate professor. Because there were people who'd been there as lecturers for 10, 15 years.
So many years.
And so on. So the idea was to encourage people to work for promotion.
Okay. Did it work?
Well, it began just before I left. And the third year where the guillotine was coming came after I had left.
Wow.
So I cannot guarantee what happened.
Okay.
But that was a very important introduction, and it made people begin to really work for promotion.
Okay.
That's one thing.
Okay.
The other thing that we did was to get the labs re-equipped.
The university laboratories. Okay.
Because for quite a while, they've been let to run down, lack of funding and so on. So I sought help from the donor community generally.
Okay.
And got help from the Japanese government to help us to re-equip some of the key labs, I think biochemistry, chemistry, and so on.
Okay.
Those were the kinds of things that we did. You know.
So with the benefit of hindsight, what would you have done if you were given the chance again today?
Well, today is a whole different story.
Okay.
because today the numbers have gone up so seriously.
Okay.
The funding situation has changed so dramatically. Quite frankly, I'm not sure what I would have done if I was there today. Because mine at the time was to revive and strengthen a 5,000 person university.
Now they are almost 40,000.
They are almost 40,000. So it's a different scale.
Okay.
Clearly, what is required now goes beyond what we have to deal with.
Yeah.
The fundraising, the external supports, the commercialization of units. It's a whole different world.
Yes.
And I look at my colleague vice chancellors now and say, better you than me.
You know, they have the collegiate system operating.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yes.
Mm-hmm. During your days when students went on strike and the government was intervening, then we got to know of a crop of people called Aki police. Was it that you also had the security there to unleash mayhem on students?
Absolutely.
I mean, what brought about the name?
Right. It's a very interesting situation.
Yes.
It reflects a number of things. One was my relation with students.
Okay.
My personal links with students as a group. The Aki police thing came up, interestingly, not in terms of oppression.
Okay.
Not at all. The security guards, I think, during my tenure, were given uniforms and organized into a clearly discernible body.
Okay.
That was all.
Oh, so it's nothing to do with, having security posts and cells on campus?
No, they were not for my security, if you see what I mean.
Okay, yes, I do.
Absolutely. It was just like the asphalt road that was built.
Yes.
Was named after me by the students again. So they put my name on everything.
Okay.
But it was more, you can check with the students, a matter of fondness, not of oppression, because the security guards never, during my 7 years, attacked students.
Okay.
Not a single time.
Wow.
Never.
No. Okay. Thank you. So we move on. Yes. Life after the University of Ghana. You moved to the Association of African Universities in 1993 as the Director of Research. And you stayed on and progressed to become the substantive Secretary General.
That's right.
Where I think you were at the helm of affairs for about 5 years.
5 years, yes.
Can you just give us a brief about your experiences at the Association of African Universities?
Yes. Well, that's an interesting question. Because I joined the Association of African Universities in 1993, I think.
Yes.
At that time, the association had been through a very bad patch. Because, as you recall, all universities across the continent had gone through a very bad patch in the late 1980s. So the Association of Universities was just recovering. And we had a very good leader, Professor Donald Ekong.
Yes. Of blessed memory.
Of blessed memory.
Yes.
Who very energetically began to revive the association.
Okay.
And because I was at the time Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, I was his nearest university.
Okay.
So I helped him a lot in the work he was doing.
Okay.
So when I retired from the University of Ghana, it was a natural for him to invite me to come and work with him more directly in the association. So my move there was based upon that earlier relationship, yes. But the specific task which I was given was the task of helping with the research work by the association, but also the management training aspects.
Okay. Training of vice chancellors?
Vice chancellors and senior management.
Senior management of universities?
Of universities,
okay.
Yes. On the research side, we introduced what was called the study program on higher education research.
Okay.
Because prior to that, there was hardly any higher education research as such done by African scholars. It was done by others for us.
Okay.
So we began a program which flourished for many years.
Okay.
I also took over a preceding program which was called the Senior University Management something or other, SUMA.
SUMA, okay.
Which was started before my time.
All right.
The idea then was to bring together African vice chancellors for a workshop of training.
Okay.
It was run from Canada.
The SUMA workshop?
Yes.
Okay.
But when I took we then changed it over and localized it.
Okay.
So it was run from Accra.
Oh, so it became an African
very much so
run program. Okay.
And went beyond that. And we changed it to become a leadership and development program, LEDEV.
Okay. LEDEV.
Yes.
Okay.
And later
so
on,
LEDEV started from your era?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
I introduced LEDEV.
Wow, it's been running for quite a while.
And then MADEV, which didn't quite start in my time,
yes.
we introduced it.
Yes.
I don't know what happened to that. Is it running?
MADEV is running.
There you go.
Yes.
I'm very pleased to hear that because we realized from the work of SUMA that we required to separate out the leadership dimension from the management dimension, and I'm glad that it's working as you propose.
They are all working.
That was my trajectory until I became the Secretary General, which was a whole different ball game.
As Secretary General, what were some of the challenges that you faced at the AAU?
Right. A number of very important issues about the nature of the association itself.
Okay.
And the place of higher education in the African scenario. One of the long-term battles we fought was against the policy then prevailing of encouraging our governments to devote funding to basic education development.
Okay.
In effect, at the cost of higher education. Now we, across the continent, fought very hard against that. Because while we completely agree with the notion of improving basic education, it seemed to us completely irresponsible to play down the value of higher education. So by the time I became Secretary General of the AAU, the battle had gone beyond the continent. We were now pressing the donors to accept the notion that you cannot run a serious modern economy without a vibrant higher education sector. Luckily for us, at the same time, the Blair Commission,
Tony
Blair's commission, looking at the education and African development generally.
Yes.
Also very importantly, for the first time, the AU, African Union, also took up the task. So the AU's role was to provide the arguments and the research basis for entrenching higher education as part of the thinking of the AU and the other donors generally on this matter. So that was a very important structural change that we introduced at that time.
I recall there was the arbitrary conversation that AAU fronted to make a case for higher education in Africa. Was it successful?
Very successful.
Okay.
The effect was the transformation of donor support.
Okay.
Because until then, for example, DIPI, the British aid support outfit, did not support higher education or AAU.
Okay.
But after that, after the Abete and the Blair Commission report, DFID began to support higher education, certainly with the AAU. So it was very effective at that time.
I think AAU had about 3.5 million pounds.
Absolutely.
Yes.
From nothing.
Mobilization of regional capacity initiative.
Absolutely. You were right at it. You were there at the time, of course.
Prof, I believe I was there.
You were very much part of that. That was a very significant transformation of the aid thing. Of course, the impact went beyond DFID. Other donors as well.
Yes.
The higher education partnership in the US and so on also supported. So that was a very important change in the atmosphere.
Currently, the World Bank is actually creating centers of excellence across Africa.
The World Bank?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, they are in their third phase.
Very interesting.
Yes, they did one for
because we had to fight the World Bank very hard.
Yes.
to bend their view towards this.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's going on now.
Yeah, it's going on.
Excellent.
And in fact, the African Union is also creating centers of excellence.
There you go. Fantastic.
Yeah. So thank you for the good work done.
Thank you very much.
I know it was Herculean then, but now it has really gained ground.
I'm very pleased to hear that.
The African governments are also picking up.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. Prof, now you left AAU, but you didn't retire. I'm told professors don't retire.
No. Believe it, that's absolutely true.
Yes. So after AAU, where have you been?
Oh my goodness. I've been mainly working in the civic atmosphere.
Okay.
Working with civil society organizations, working for government as well.
Okay.
Pro bono.
Pro bono.
Pro bono, yes. On committees and boards.
Okay.
And pre-research and all manner of things.
Okay.
Keep me busy.
You were enrolled at the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences in 1992.
That's right.
Even when you were at the University of Ghana.
That's right.
And then you rose to become the president.
Yes. For one term.
For one term.
Yes.
2016, 2017.
17, no, 15, 16, I think.
15, 16.
Yes.
So what were some of the transformations that, had taken place since you got there at the GAAS?
Well, the Ghana Academy of Arts and Science is a very important institution in terms of its bringing together some of the best minds that Ghana has, without doubt.
Okay. Before you go on, when you say best mind, does it mean that it is a kind of a club that not everybody can enroll?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. It's a very limited access body.
Okay.
And fellows are selected on the basis of their academic achievements.
Okay.
By a very rigorous
selection process.
Very rigorous indeed. So to get into the academy, you must have established a credible track record of high caliber academic work, globally recognized.
Globally recognized, that's the key word.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So the best minds of the country are in the academy. Okay. Without doubt.
Do you have people from outside Ghana?
As honorary members.
As honorary members?
Yes.
Okay.
Only Ghanaians to be regular members.
Okay.
Outsiders can be honorary members.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But to the question of what has been done, many things. The most significant thing during my tenure was the introduction of a committee to review our work.
The work of the academy?
Of the academy as a whole, and bring it up to date.
Okay.
At the end of the work of the committee, we decided to strengthen the chapters of the academy and to link them more directly with government agencies, the private sector and so on, so that it created a much better rooting of the academy in social practice, from which our research work will emerge. That is still ongoing. It is not over yet.
I know the GAAS, or the academy, has a new secretariat.
Yes.
Was it initiated during your time?
No.
Okay.
It was started before my time, but it was completed during my tenure.
Wow. Congratulations then.
Thank you very much.
I guess you pushed it.
Well, I pushed it, but it was begun before my time.
Okay.
So it's simply continuing work that others have started.
Okay. Yeah. Prof, you are a very well awarded person. You were awarded the Companion of the Order of the Volta in 2007. When your name was mentioned, how did you feel?
Well, I felt humble.
Humble?
Yes, because that award was a national recognition of contributions to the national interest through my work on higher education.
Okay.
And as a scholar, you become professor, you become vice chancellor, but to get recognition beyond the academic sphere, I thought was significant, and I really felt grateful for that. Thankful for that.
What about the Black Star Excellence Award?
Exactly. These were other awards by other agencies which were looking at what I was contributing to civil society work in other areas. Again, this was a very significant recognition because you don't think of those things, you simply do what you are doing.
Yes.
And for others to recognize. Very important.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
But the highest to me is when you were selected to become a member of the Council of State of the Republic of Ghana.
Right. Yes.
Prof, What is it? What is the Council of State all about?
I suppose it is in the nature of the second chamber under the 1992 Constitution.
Ghana's Constitution?
Yes.
Okay.
Because there was a debate about having a second chamber like the House of Lords.
Yes.
But the Constitutional Review Committee chose not to have that, but instead have a council of selected senior citizens who would advise the president and the executive in private about national affairs generally. And the body is made up of people who are there ex officio, called the office, but also others who are selected by the president and the cabinet. And I was lucky to be one of those who were selected by the president and the cabinet.
Prof, you were not lucky. You had it on merit.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So what were some of the things that during your era you managed to achieve?
Well, that's interesting because quite frankly, I think the Council of State is underutilized.
Underutilized?
Yes.
Okay.
My experience was that we were not able to tackle some of the critical questions which would have helped government in making decisions. It was partly the council's own slowness in taking up issues, but also the lack of a tradition of consulting the elders on matters that are critical.
Oh, you mean maybe the three arms of government were not consulting the council?
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly. And in a way, it is not their fault because there was no tradition of that in the
constitution,
in the constitutional arrangement prior to that.
Okay.
And so my frustration is that there was a lot more we could have done for government if we'd been more involved in some of the difficult questions that government had to face.
Was there therefore no trust in the council?
Oh no, on the contrary, there was a lot of trust. But it was taken for granted. That the council would say a few things, confirm appointments, and that was it. It was a failure to recognize what the potential of the council.
Okay. Prof, you have chaired several boards, several councils, several committees. What comes to mind is that you are currently the chair of the review committee that is looking at the collegiate system of governance at the University of Ghana. You are the chair of the steering committee on the project called Tackling Illicit Financial Outflows from Ghana. You are the chair of the steering committee of the Ghana Oil and Gas for Inclusive Growth. You are the chair of the Council of Trustees Institute for Democratic Governance in Ghana. You are a member of the Governing Council and Faculty Board of the Ghana Insurance College. You are a member of the Board of Governors of Sajifo Kwame Nkrumah African Genius Awards, etc., etc., etc. Prof, are these not taking your social life away?
On the contrary, these keep me engaged in the things that I think are important. Clearly, it's very time-consuming. But each of those bodies you mentioned is involved in important work, which I think is a privilege to be involved in doing. Now, of course, I'm not doing it alone. I'm part of a group, but at least I'm engaged and involved in doing all this. And the key thing for me is that by involvement in all these bodies, I'm kept very much in touch with the next generation, the one below that, and the current affairs of the country. So it's been, for me, a very productive engagement since my retirement from official duties.
And these are basically pro bono?
All pro bono.
Oh my goodness. Prof, I know for one to become a professor, you need to publish. You have published widely on various things, various subjects. We cannot even classify them. But I know you have published on legal and constitutional issues. You've published on governance issues, published on political economy, the economic development, higher education, etc., etc. So what else have you not published on?
Two things on that. First of all, publication is part of the work of an academic. So that in the normal course of your work, if you are doing it properly, you will have research work which you publish.
Okay.
That's the first part. You get promoted, recognized as an academic based on your publications.
Okay.
But beyond that, I saw publication as a way of, one, improving myself.
Okay.
By learning about things beyond my technical field.
Okay.
But also using the skills I've acquired as a university person to interpret our reality in the areas in which I'm studying for the wider public. So it wasn't simply publishing for promotion, but publishing to spread understanding
and to make an impact.
And to motivate and to stimulate others on key issues. So, for example, although I'm a trained lawyer,
yes,
and my legal work is what got me the promotions in the first place,
yes,
much of my publications have been away from legal work.
It's true.
Because real life goes beyond the law.
It's true.
And so I've seen my publication record not so much as academic achievements, but I assess them by the extent to which they contribute to shaping debates, creating platforms for discussion of key issues. That's how I see publication.
And your grandchildren are waiting for your first fable. So, Professor as a novelist.
It is cooking up in my head.
Okay. Then we look forward to reading from you at your 80th birthday.
Absolutely.
Prof, they say that a good conversation never ends.
True.
So this is just the beginning of the beginning.
Thank you very much.
So we want to wrap up.
Right.
But in doing so, we just want you to just say a little bit about your social life.
Right.
So tell us about you as a family man.
Right. As a family man, I have had the good fortune of having an excellent wife. We've been married for 51 years now.
51?
51 years, yes. 2 children and 3 grandchildren.
Prof, come again.
Yep.
Only 2 children?
2 children and
only
3 grandchildren.
3 grandchildren.
That's it.
It doesn't make you an African.
No, exactly. If you were to know what my father did, and my father, his father before him, you'll see that the point you are making is absolutely correct.
Okay.
I'm an exception in the family tradition.
To the family.
1 wife,
okay.
2 children, 3 grandchildren, no more.
Wow.
That's it.
Congrats. I think you are mentoring somebody. Who are you mentoring?
Well, in a way, that's the whole point of my work, which I mentioned earlier. I see my social work at the moment exactly as mentoring.
Okay.
Because right from the days at Legon in the 1970s, there's come up a whole generation of serious intellectual activists who are now matured into 60-year-olds who are still leading. And all the work, all the list you mentioned of my chairmanship and so on, is working with them.
Okay.
So the mentoring continues to this day. Not directly, specifically, but in the constant interaction and engagement on these social activities.
Are we looking forward to an Akilakpa ideology?
My goodness. That is the kind of thing which I leave to others.
Okay.
I'll carry what I'm doing and let others interpret it as a
maybe we should. Prof, so what about the other social life, your political activism, kind of? What line do you do?
Well, essentially, I suppose you will consider my political position as a progressive. I won't go beyond that.
Okay.
Because I believe absolutely firmly that African economies are not under our control. They ought to be. I believe that the political and economic arrangements we've got now, despite all our pronouncements about independence and so on, our arrangements are constantly tying us even more tightly under the control of foreign capital.
That's right.
And so it seems to me that it is a lifelong task.
It is.
To make sure that we do not accept and take for granted the current dispensation. So I see my role as helping others to constantly call into question the current arrangements of our political economy. Because if we don't question the present, we are accepting subjugation forever, and that is unacceptable. That's my broad starting point.
Okay. Prof, congratulations again.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much.
At 79 plus, you are mentally active and physically strong. What is the secret?
Well, it is something I think I will say loudly.
Okay.
It is so common for our young professionals after graduating to stop exercise. I mean physical exercise. My one message, don't stop exercising. Whatever you do, do some walking, some tennis, some soccer, whatever, some physical exercise.
Okay.
Everybody should be doing that all the time. Men, and especially our women.
Especially our women. So our women, an advice from Professor Sawyer, don't stop exercising.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Prof, your very final words.
My final word is back to higher education.
Okay.
And that is that we are currently facing problems in the higher education system, because I don't think we have quite, as a continent, thought through fully the role of higher education in Africa at this time.
Okay.
So my final word to all my colleagues who are active in the field now is to step back a bit and let's assess more closely what higher education ought to be doing at this time in the process of helping Africa redefine its future and achieve it.
Okay. Prof, you have really set a research agenda now that we are going to carry forward. Hello viewers, we have been talking to Professor Akilakpa Sawyer, who is our maiden guest on the AAU Impact Stories celebrating academic mentors. Thank you very much, Prof. And viewers, tune in again next week for yet another interesting episode. Thank you very much.
Over-the-counter drugs, OTC. At the mention of over-the-counter drugs, our minds are sent wondering as to whether they are safe for consumption or not. But we are here to change and renew mindsets about over-the-counter drugs. Let's take a listen.
Over-the-counter drugs are drugs that a person can walk into a pharmacy and buy without a prescription. Yes, so the pharmacist will not necessarily ask for a prescription if the person is to walk in and say he wants this particular drug. Yes.
A more restricted class of OTC drugs also exists. These products, while considered OTC, are kept behind the pharmacy counter and are dispensed by a pharmacist because they are subject to abuse and may require proper identification and a signature.
Some examples of over-the-counter drugs include paracetamol. We have ibuprofen, diclofenac, and sometimes they come in combinations. For instance, FPAC, yes, Gibidol, those are all over-the-counter medications, yes.
Over-the-counter drugs are not illegal. Over-the-counter drugs are drugs that are legal and are authorized to be sold in Ghana, across the world actually. They are found in pharmacies, they are found in licensed chemical seller shops.
Some people abuse OTC drugs to self-medicate for mental illnesses like anxiety and depression. Abusing these medications can also make people euphoric and hallucinate. Any use outside of what's recommended is considered an abuse. Moving on to OTC monographs, they define the safety, effectiveness, acceptable ingredients, doses, formulations, and labeling of OTC active ingredients. An OTC drug monograph is established for each class of products.
So for the over-the-counter drugs, even though they are safe, they are classically safe and that's why they are sold over the counter, they can still have problems. Yes, there are still some problems that you can face, especially for the painkiller ones, like the ones we call the NSAIDs. That's the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So they are usually painkillers, and when they are taken correctly, they are not problematic. But when they are taking too much, they can give you what we call stomach ulcer. They can erode the stomach wall, yes, and then can cause ulcer. So too much of that can be problematic. So if you are taking it, it's not necessarily something you take for long. It's just for the pain, just for the symptoms. So if you are having pain, you have a headache, you take one, twice, it's enough. Maybe 3 days, 5 days, it's okay. But if you keep on coming to buy the FPAC, coming to buy the Gibidol, coming to buy the paracetamol can also cause liver damage. Yes, overuse of paracetamol can cause liver damage. So every drug, no matter how safe, can have some adverse effects if you take it too much. So ideally, there should be some regulation to the way you take it. So if you walk into a pharmacy and the pharmacist has realized that you keep on buying this particular drug, they can try and stop you or give you some advice. Maybe change it to this one. This is safer for you. So if you have active ulcer, for instance, you have to go to the pharmacy and tell them that I have ulcer, and then they have specific painkillers that they can give you that will not give you problems.
Finally, all patients should consult with their doctor, pharmacist, or other healthcare providers if they have additional questions concerning OTC drug use. Pregnant women should speak with their doctors before taking any medication, vitamin, or herbal supplement, even if it's an OTC drug. Thanks for staying tuned. This has been Health Africa on AAU TV. I am Bridget Amadente.
Are you an institution or individual? Do you intend to organize a memorable event to be archived for future reference? Then look no further than AAU Studios, because it's your best bet with our spacious studio and state-of-the-art media equipment such as 4K Panasonic video cameras, KinoFlow lights, assorted microphones, live streaming equipment, among others. You are sure to get the best of productions. Visit us at Trinity Avenue, East Legon, adjacent the National Accreditation Board, or contact the AAU Studios via the following email addresses: info@aau.org, AAUTV@aau.org, or Ransford@aau.org. Alternatively, you can call us on +233 244 736280.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you for the presentation. Well done. So This time around, we are going to have Dr. Elena Ioannis. She's the Deputy Director for Quality Assurance and Promotion at the University of South Africa, UNISA, since 2013 in the Directorate of Institutional Quality Assurance and Enhancement. Since then, she has fulfilled a number of quality assurance roles and functions at the managerial and practitioner level. So this time around, we also need the shop floor people who know what really happens on the ground. This is one thing I always think about, that if we are looking for the advisory board members and what, we look for names and not for the person who will provide us with what we want, which are the people who are practically involved with what we want, and they make better contributions. Current duties include, amongst others, liaison with academic and professional as well as administrative staff in developing, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating the UNISA Integrated Quality Management and Assurance Framework, facilitating internal and external reviews, and reporting on review outcomes. The last of this is aimed to assuring internal and external stakeholders of the quality and benefits of open and distance learning. In addition, she is responsible for external liaison with national and international quality assurance agencies, which include the African Council on Distance Education, where Prof. Tang Lang is the Executive Director for Quality Assurance there. She assisted in developing toolkits for quality assurance in distance higher education in Africa. I could go on, and this one I could write a book. But in the interest of time, Dr. Elena, you are welcome. What I request you to do is to add on to what Prof. Judonu has said, and thereafter, may you please go on if you have anything to advise us on capacity building for academic and academic support and students' digital literacy and anything else that you can add, because we just have you and we check on the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I hope you can hear me.
Yes,
can you hear me?
Hear you.
Thank you very much. And I just want to, and thank you very much for the opportunity. And I just wish to add the following to what on the provision of policies and the voice of another key stakeholder that we shouldn't forget, and that is our external quality assurance agencies in our respective countries, because they are, as public higher education institutions, we have a statutory obligation to also listen to the guidelines and directives that they often give us during the COVID-19 and this pandemic time that we're in. I just want to share with you what our South African Council on Higher Education have provided in terms of institutional quality guidelines for higher education in the time of COVID-19, and specifically, just to add on to what my previous colleague have shared, for program management and program development. And in this time, what they have shared with us is that curriculum adjustments in terms of elective modules and topics, that is what we will also have to look at in terms of policy revisions. We will have to look at our existing policies for recognition of prior learning, credit accumulation and transfer, and assessments in higher education. And they have advised that these would remain pertinent and should continue to be used. In terms of academic staff workload allocations and performance agreements, and they said that we should revisit them, and this would actually be one of those policy revisions that we should have to make, because we have to revisit this to account for the huge investment in time that staff will make to pivot to the emergency for remote teaching and learning that they had to invest during this COVID-19 time. So in terms of policy revision for quality assurance, I want to just add that there are many considerations in terms of program management, program development that we as quality assurance managers and quality assurance practitioners will have to assist staff at that level, so that when they revisit those policies on curriculum development and assessment, that we can advise and guide them on that. So that is what I would want to submit to this conversation on quality. Thanks, Chair.
Very much, Doc. I think our time is a bit strained, but allow
Should
me
I continue?
Yes,
you want me to continue?
You
with
can
the capacity
continue.
building?
I think you should join on and continue for just
capacity building. I just have a few minutes on capacity
yes.
building. I'll do that
Okay.
then.
Yes, you can do that too.
Okay. So in terms of capacity building thank you, Chair. So for capacity building for the new normal, shall I just continue? You can still hear me?
Yes.
I will share the slides then later with everybody. And what I would have shared with the colleagues now is just, because everybody has already highlighted what have been important and what if we have discussed in every of the webinars now. So I would have wanted to highlight that which have remained at the margins. And I just wanted to bring that into the conversation this afternoon. The new normal, I want to stress here, have impelled the leveling of the playing field for all, for students and staff. It has impelled us to redefine the ways of learning and working. And it has impelled us to reskill and capacitate staff and students, and impelled us to change the organizational design for the new reality. Our approach, as everybody has already said, is to regular and documented engagement among staff and students on all aspects of quality management, implementation, support, enhancement, and monitoring at all levels, not only in the academic sphere, but also in the support sectors. We have to monitor the systems and processes so that we highlight the areas for capacity building, because there will be new areas that we have not actually thought about, and we have to bring that into the conversation on quality. So the areas of consideration that I don't want us to forget, and I just want to speak about two focus areas: academics and academic support. And then I will focus on three areas in students and student support. Firstly, in terms of academics and academic support, the capacity building for academics and academic support, and for want of a better word, I've termed these softer skills. It's the humanizing framework for integrating technologies into instructional design. According to Stobel and Tilburg-Webb, a humanizing framework enables teachers to critically evaluate their activities on how technology is used and integrated into the teaching mission. And the main purpose is that technology is only used as and when and how it may be appropriate to achieve the educational goal. The core principles of the framework are the following: fostering independent thinking, problem-based learning, student-centeredness, and student engagement and interaction. Capacity building in this area for academics should be in how do they actually reorganize their instructional design so that students can feel included in the teaching learning environment. This is a critical area for development. The second one is how do we actually manage personalized individual feedback to students? And in this area, this is actually very critical because during the lockdown period, we could see that students might feel isolated and if they don't get that feedback from lecturers, they might feel they don't know if they are actually succeeding or not succeeding. And in this area, capacity building in terms of learning analytics can assist. And that is where we can actually focus on. Another area that we have also should not forget is that the emergency remote teaching strategy that has been adopted under pressure and within a short time frame threatens to exclude or disadvantage many, especially students with disabilities. And this is an area that I feel very passionate about. And we have to be vigilant and guard against lowered expectations. If we allow this, then students with disabilities will again be marginalized. And academic support and capacity building should focus on empowering academics and support staff to accommodate and support students with disabilities from registration to graduateness. And in terms of students and student support, and I'm rushing, I'm sorry because it's time limiting. Are you still there, Chair?
I'm here.
Oh, okay, sorry. So in terms of students and student support and the capacity building areas that I don't want us to forget is digital literacy, and enough has been said about the importance of this for all students. And of course, as my colleagues have highlighted earlier on, we need the ICT platforms and we need the data. And that is what we have to focus on. The second area that we shouldn't forget is in tandem with the online proctoring and other interventions to curb plagiarism, we have to shift the debate to the importance of academic integrity. We have to start working towards a new cadre of students, and clear and regular communications with students is paramount now in the new normal. The third one that I don't want us to forget is that the online learning environment is not easy to navigate, and the COVID-19 has brought more challenges. We have to invest in provision of support in terms of e-counseling and e-mentoring and other psycho-social support for students, because the online environment can be a lonely environment. And at UNISA, we have started with these projects and we will share this in future webinars. So with that, I'm sorry it was a marathon that I've just rushed through. I say that capacity building in quality assurance remain still very important. Quality is should remain foremost on the agenda of every university. There's no one size fit all, but we can learn from each other.
Hello,
And
Doc.
now you have lost me. Thank you very much.
I think she has challenges with connection. But while we are, okay, you can continue.
Okay, so you have not heard me. Where did you lose me?
We did.
You
we
lost
did
me.
Violet. We were hearing
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Yes, yeah. We were hearing her. Thank you.
Are you so?
Continue, Doc.
Okay. So what I was saying is, I said, in terms of capacity building, and I said I've rushed through because I've realized that we're at the end, and I'm sorry about that. But what I wanted to highlight here is that these are the areas that maybe in this COVID-19 and in this crisis, pandemic and emergency teaching and learning that we should not forget. And these are the areas that in the new normal we should take forward. So with that, Chair, I will hand over to my other colleagues to continue the conversation. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank the panelists and to thank Dr. Elena, who has just given another dimension. Just a quick add-on to that, quality assurance issues, they are taking a new dimension. They are going to be digital too. Staff and student support rapid response teams, for example, for ICT and internet services, efficient and effective digital communication platforms, including social media for dispersing bulk messages at low cost. All these things, psychological services. I think Dr. Elena touched on it, but this time we can just not brush it aside. It affects both students and staff, particularly those who are not really used to this mode, and everybody else is going to be stressed, and we really need to be vigilant. Strong collaborations among students, the university and alumni will help a lot to improve the quality, because we had an example of the webinar we had on Tuesday. We realized that they took advantage of the existing resources within reach. So they involved their alumni for resource mobilization and also to help them to build the systems, because they had another competitive advantage that they've got a department of ICT services. And in addition to that, the students who have not even yet graduated were also put in the fore to come up with suggestions to help. So that is quality education in terms of relevance. Strong networks. I think Ms. Nodumotlamini emphasized every other speaker, Prof. Luvio, Prof. Tanglang, Prof. Judonu, everyone else was talking about the issue that at the center of everything is effective ICT gadgets, tools, platforms, applications, softwares. We need those, and we prioritize them to the extent that somebody said even allocate 60%. Examination process, internal service security, and internal storage, internal capacity, heterogeneous teams with the ICT skills and internet services, expertise and skills. So if we don't have that, for example, we can't have then huge servers. We need them to have them on the cloud, and we pay some people to manage them for us. Security of online communication platforms, very important. Identity and access. We normally took them as just things. We called them things, but now their quality assurance matters, because everything else of the institution is there. Identity, access of management systems, the golden rules of virtual collaboration will also strengthen quality assurance in our institutions. I just wanted to also point out that this issue of student and staff support is important and key, but the number one, buy-in from our university managers. By all means, if the university management does not have a vision for improving quality, which is now at the center of everything, to give credibility to what happens during this period, so that our graduates can be accepted without question in future, those who are learning this period in this period. We simply need to embed quality assurance in what we do, not to talk about it and not to reflect on it when we are done, but as we are starting any other thing that we are doing, we will look at where is quality assurance? What can we quality assure in this thing that we are doing? And then that way we will be able to move on. And like never before, please, let's take note to make sure that we have the user manuals and the videos. These are part of quality assurance. You know why? Because instead of having too many calls and too many queries and inquiries, where we have very short videos and user manuals which guide people on how they carry on their businesses, it will save us a lot. Capacity development, let me just reiterate another dimension of it. This time around, you see, we are all at the center of online learning. You can't say I was not trained to do that. You need to know. I can tell you that it's very important for us to move on, because the resistance is mainly also because of technophobia. People do not know what works, how it works. I remember when I was a teaching assistant, I bothered this lecturer who knew it. I have cut, where should I paste now? Where are the things which I should paste? Can you imagine? Those were the days. And when I look back today, I say, we need to learn everything. Right now, some people cannot even create a link from this Zoom or any other platform. Some people cannot join a lot of students, and they spend time being frustrated. So we need capacity building. Let's take advantage of some of the free online webinars and workshops that are taking time now, so that we can enhance and enable ourselves to make sure that we move on. Remember, there is the whole university system. Now we are not concentrating only on teaching and learning. Let's look at how we are going to do e-commerce. How are students going to pay fees? How is the university going to pay?
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Okay, so how are we going to check on the library, check on the clinic, and check on everything? We have admissions, we have recruitment of staff, we have marketing for new students. You are telling me you will wait until COVID goes in order to take new cohorts of students, when others are already marketing online to make sure they get students. So it's about everything and everything. I had some institutions which are saying, even UNISA told us, this time around, their exams are going to be online. I saw a question on that, and it was saying, how do you ensure quality in exams, that there's no cheating? There are many ways. Reshuffling the questions. Somebody's answering number one now, and somebody thinks they are all answering number one. They realize their number one is completely different. And to set higher order level questions, which would demand application and critical thinking. In that way, a person would not have time to ask, so what have you written? They can't write about the same in terms of application. Each one needs to think of their unique applicable situation, examination, analysis. This is the time, and it will help us a lot. What I also want to say is, when you look at access, it's a quality aspect in higher education. Access and inclusivity, all those are quality assurance issues, and we are now bringing them to the fore, so that people don't look down upon them and assume they are just things which are there. So there are many things which we could have said in terms of online things. Again, students are going to select their student bodies online. They are going to share and campaign online. Everything now is online, but at the center of it all should be quality and quality assurance. So let's take some questions. Irene, I don't know if I can get some assistance, because I've been cut off a number of times, and I'm not sure now if I'll be able to pick the questions that have been asked earlier.
Okay, Dr. Makuku. And so since we are here now, let's go to some of the questions
But before we go on, Doc, I have already forwarded some to your emails, which you can check and then go on and ask. So there is this one here from Chiboli. He wants to ask, how do we ensure that we maintain quality in teaching during COVID-19? I think most of the presentation have already addressed that, but if you would want to make any submission, you can.
May you please repeat again?
He said, how do we ensure quality of teaching and learning during COVID-19?
Okay, I think most of the things have been said that in the first place, we need to have the infrastructure that we need to use. But the other thing now is training and capacity building. It's not the lecturers. The lecturers alone, yes, they need to be trained. But the students too, they have got their part to play. And we also need to train the students. In the first instance, in my earlier presentation, that's why I said, you realize that we are only training emergency remote teaching to lecturers. And we are making a deliberate move as the Association of African Universities. Just contact me as the workshops coordinator. We are also training, we intend to train students also, because if they are not savvy in the use of technology, we have problems. And it prompts me to tell you that let's use the particular platforms that both students and staff are used to begin with. Because if we do that, they are not grappling with learning how to use the platform or the social media platform, which is the, let's say, WhatsApp. Everybody else is used to WhatsApp. And the WhatsApp can help us. Everybody else is used to emails. So we can start from these things which people already know. And we now continue to build our capacity in training people to use more, because more and more platforms are going to come. Right now we have Zoom. We can't push people into the deeper end before we teach them. And it prompts me to then say, if there are any people who are involved in this thing as policymakers and stakeholders, we have the teacher training and the postgraduate diploma in teacher education. We need to revisit the curriculum, because where are they going to work? The whole world is now digitized. So it means the way we train teachers on how to teach, the way we train lecturers in the postgraduate center really matters. And this time around, some people, some universities did not have the teaching and learning centers. It's something we need to institute like yesterday. Let's institute the teaching and learning centers. We equip them very well, and these ones are going to help us a lot to now train and address the other issues which come with the ability to do some work. For example, I went to one university. They had purchased these huge interactive boards and the video conferencing, but the lecturers were trained once. Those who came after the training were never trained. So when I did institutional evaluations, I saw the students were complaining, we have this, but it's underutilized. Of what importance will it be that we acquire expensive ICT and internet services that we cannot use in our institutions? So let's have the capacity building moving along with acquisition. Thank you. I don't know if any one of the panelists wants to add anything on that.
Okay, so this question goes to, okay. This question, yes, this question goes to Nodumo if she is around. The person wanted to ask, she's Faith, and she says, what is the AAU doing in order to ensure harmonization in digitization of learning so that African countries can move forward as one bloc rather than individual fragmented countries. So this is from Faith and want Nodumo to answer that.
Let me give another question before she answers so that she can respond also, because it's pointing at her and any other. In view of the ICT infrastructural challenge confronting most African higher education institutions, can AAU facilitate with the African Union deliberate investment on robust ICT connectivity to link all African higher education institutions? South Africa has such an infrastructure at national level, I can acknowledge. In view of the ICT infrastructural challenge confronting most African higher education institutions, can AAU facilitate with AAU deliberate investment of ICT connectivity to link Africa? So Nodumo, start first, and then after you, if we have other people to support from the panelists. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Violet. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So concerning the issue of harmonization in digitization, I think we need to take into consideration the Council for Distance Education in Africa, which is based in Kenya. I believe that they've come up with a framework or a policy to guide programs that are open distance e-learning programs. So that is where we should really start in terms of making sure we have a common set of guidelines for how to do e-learning, and that has already begun. And I think Dr. Mak also involved in the African Standards and Guidelines initiative within HAQUA. So I believe that's where we should start. And then, of course, at a national level, we had a webinar recently with the National Quality Assurance Agencies, and the whole idea was to conscientize the national level quality assurance bodies to really move this issue of online learning, online degrees, because what we see is that most of our countries have not really embraced them. So that is where we should start. Let's update our policies at a national level, those policies that guide accreditation. But we are already there because we do have a framework from the Council for Distance Education. We also have the African Standards and Guidelines. Concerning infrastructure, there have been initiatives before. You should remember that Africa is actually doing well in terms of connectivity. If you look back maybe 10 years before, there were not so many fiber cables or sea cables that we could tap into. So potentially infrastructure has improved. But what has not improved is pulling that capacity and bringing it within our countries. That's where the issues are. The national level infrastructure has improved at the same rate as the maybe regional infrastructure or resident infrastructure by our coastlines. So there have been projects that have tried to address this: Africa Connect 1, Africa Connect 2, and now we are about to implement Africa Connect 3, but it has already begun. So what we need to do, we really need to strengthen our entrance. For example, Africa Connect 2 was asking our governments to co-finance the projects. So Africa Connect 2 had resources where we would meet the governments halfway. but we saw there was very little preparedness in most countries to sort of co-finance some of these infrastructure projects. So we are working with the African Union. We've been working on this, as I said, since 2015. Progress has been made. The challenge now is the national level infrastructure that we need our governments to be involved in. We need those infrastructure projects to be prioritized at a national level. So we need to bring some of these discussions closer home and really look how we are prioritizing resources at a national level, so that when the donors come with resources, we are able to meet them halfway. Thank you so much, Dr. Makuku.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nodumo. Can we have some of the panelists to add up anything in relation to the two questions?
Okay, so this is for Professor Livuyo Landley. The person wanted to know, how do you conduct quality examinations online, devoid of cheating and other vices? And also, how can we deliver quality on practical courses online that will portray students' real hands-on experience in this new era?
Yes. Yeah, can I come in then?
Yes, Prof, it's your question, so it's only right.
Yeah, I think in my presentation, I said there was a code of honor where students would actually say, this is my work entirely. Therefore, you sign that agreement, which I think it is also binding in one's conscience if we all believe that we should be ethical beings, specifically within the higher education space. The second also line of defense is when we actually having a softwares that dictate any issues around plagiarism, or what I call high levels of similarity within one's work, so that we can do those issues. And then thirdly, we are actually looking at iris recognition, and then also to use a lot of proctoring tools where they can actually monitor students to be able to say it's not the same person that has been typing because of the keystrokes and everything. Therefore, these are the proctoring tools. We are actually gonna use the December examination. Within the June, we did not make enough time to get those aspects. And then also within then the other levels within the institution, there are academics and staff members who would actually be able to do moderation and all other things in order to be able to say, this student has always been performing at a 50, 60 level. All of a sudden now she's at a 800 or something. Therefore, we will be able to actually look at those variances and be able to moderate those issues. But so far, that's how we're doing that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, and the last question here is from Emmanuel Bamfo AJ. He said, can we have a policy on online qualifications so that accreditation boards in Africa can accept online qualifications?
I think Prof. Luvuyo can respond to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think to a large extent, we might need to have policies on that, but I want to really emphasize it's just a matter of attitude, because online is a delivery mode. It has got nothing to do with standards. It has got nothing to do with the levels of difficulty, because it is just a way in which you actually deliver the thing. But having said so, it's very important also to show that the traditional classroom where we all learned is not the means of learning. I think human beings have evolved further that now they are actually able to learn better and even get better materials because students at university, some do not attend classes because they've got boring lecturers that actually are not adding value to their things, but they still get their degrees. But somebody would respect that than somebody that has gone online. Therefore, this second class status of distance learning and online learning, I think COVID has actually assisted us to actually eradicate that because everybody is forced now to be online, and which I believe that is a way to go and is the future. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much. This question is very important. I just want to thank the person who actually raised it and the response that has been given right now by Prof. What happens is I have known some institutions where they say for academic support staff, yes, we can accept anybody who has done open and distance learning. But for academics, no, we can't do that. Can I tell you something? I am a testimony of a product from UNISA. That's where I did my PhD. But where am I today? So the perception that people do have to about ODL and online learning is quite unfortunate. But now, can you see, we are having our eyes being opened to say there's everything everywhere that you can use to actually make sure this integrity and assessment and exam process, which has always been questioned, can actually have its integrity. And so this is a very important aspect. Other than that, I was also looking at, in our countries, we have universities in Africa, which are from elsewhere, in Asia, America, or what. And then we also have African universities. What I'm not really happy about is this labeling theory. You label, this one, UNICAF is everywhere across the world. I know Malawi and Zambia are already offering UNICAF degrees and people are graduating. But what I may need to emphasize is that maybe in circumstances where we don't have a COVID-19 and such other pandemics, the blended learning mode would work very, very well. And there's a misconception that people think online and ODL does not offer practicals. That's another area which I need to address. Unfortunately, maybe most people have left, but the truth is that even with online and ODL, you are afforded practicals. You can do them in your country in some place that is organized for you. I'm talking from experience. And so whether you are doing medicine, teaching, banking and finance, the university can give you a letter to facilitate you being engaged there, or in some university to do your practical in ICT, in biology, in medicine. That is the reason why UNISA offers all these practical disciplines. Have we ever asked ourselves how they do it? So this misconception should also go in order for people to now have a broader understanding and a broader perspective of what is surrounding ODL. These misconceptions, we now need to clean them up and build the real conceptions of the things which are on the ground. So we would need more and more of those people who have been involved in online and ODL, the Prof. Judonus, the Dr. Ioannis and Prof. Tang Lang. There are so many others. On Tuesday, we had a webinar from Valley View University here in Ghana. They did very, very well. Those who attended can tell us that it was good. Ladies and gentlemen, surely even the elders say everything should come to an end, no matter how good, no matter how beautiful it is. So at this juncture, allow me to thank the AAU management. Why? Because surely they've been highly responsive from the start. And to the extent that recently they acquired this Zoom platform for us. And we are very grateful that it's a forward-looking management which has got a vision to serve the continent. And at this juncture, I just want to say there are more benefits for AAU members. If you are not a member, I encourage you to be one. I just want to say we are starting our quality assurance workshops. Please, you have my email address and you have my WhatsApp number. We are going to write you. We are running a survey where we are asking people, what is it that you want us to cover? And I just want to acknowledge there are people who don't know anything much about quality assurance. That's why the first one, we will start from the basics. Then when we have the basics, we are now applying them to the digital norm. So each other session, we will bring somebody from the library to help us on quality assuring a library resources. Next time, it's somebody on exams who is an expert in that, and how do we quality assure exams. The other time we have enrollment and recruitment of student support and what, we have an expert each time who will come to handle the aspect of the digital space quality assurance. And I can assure you, you will not afford to miss any one of them. In terms of finance, how are the fees going to be paid? I know many have started on it, but there's now more to it. You are going to have many more students now using many more modes of payment. How will you make sure that there will be no fraud? You think 100 students have paid only to realize all that money has been taken by somebody else, purporting to be you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all the audience, the participants. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank the panelists. You have done a great job and you have shown your expertise. I want to thank the technical team for all what you have done. We still have a long way, but it shall be done. I want to thank myself. I want to thank management for giving me the opportunity also to try and bring the people together as the coordinator of this program. And I say thank you to myself. Thank you to AAU. Thank you to AAU senior management. Thank you to the technical team. Thank you to the participants. Do fear, please don't close the session because a few comments are still coming and we want to use those as we evaluate and find our way forward. But any other participants can leave at any moment from now. Bye-bye. Wishing you the best. I miss the people. You know, I'm always among you. Bye-bye.
Over-the-counter drugs, OTC. At the mention of over-the-counter drugs, our minds are sent wondering as to whether they are safe for consumption or not. But we are here to change and renew mindsets about over-the-counter drugs. Let's take a listen.
Over-the-counter drugs are drugs that a person can walk into a pharmacy and buy without a prescription. Yes, so the pharmacist will not necessarily ask for a prescription if the person is to walk in and say they want this particular drug. Yes.
A more restricted class of OTC drugs also exists. These products, while considered OTC, are kept behind the pharmacy counter and are dispensed by a pharmacist because they are subject to abuse.
Paracetamol, we have ibuprofen, diclofenac, and sometimes they come in combinations. For instance, F-Pack, yes, Gibidol, those are all over-the-counter medications, yes.
Over-the-counter drugs are not illegal. Over-the-counter drugs are drugs that are legal and are authorized to be sold in Ghana, across the world actually. They are found in pharmacies, they are found in licensed chemical seller shops.
Some people abuse OTC drugs to self-medicate for mental illnesses like anxiety and depression. Abusing these medications can also make people euphoric and hallucinate. Any use outside of what's recommended is considered an abuse. Moving on to OTC monographs, they define the safety, effectiveness, acceptable ingredients, doses, formulations, and labeling of OTC active ingredients. An OTC drug monograph is established for each class of products.
So for the over-the-counter drugs, even though they are safe, they are classically safe and that's why they are sold over the counter, they can still have problems. Yes, there are still some problems that you can face, especially for the painkiller ones, like the ones we call the NSAIDs. That's the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So they are usually painkillers, and when they are taken correctly, they are not problematic. But when they are taking too much, they can give you what we call stomach ulcer. They can erode the stomach wall, yes, and then can cause ulcer. So too much of that can be problematic. So if you are taking it, it's not necessarily something you take for long. It's just for the pain, just for the symptoms. So if you are having pain, you have a headache, you take one, twice, it's enough. Maybe 3 days, 5 days, it's okay. But
or individual? Do you internalize a memorable event to be archived for future reference? Then look no further than AAU Studios, because it's your best bet with our spacious studio and state-of-the-art media equipment such as 4K Panasonic video cameras, KinoFlow lights, assorted microphones, live streaming equipment, among others. You are sure to get the best of productions. Visit us at Trinity Avenue, East Legon, adjacent the National Accreditation Board, or contact the AAU Studios via the following email addresses: info@aau.org, AAUTV@aau.org, or ransford@aau.org. Alternatively, 80.
Hello, welcome to another knowledge sharing episode of 30 Minutes with HR. I am your host, Rita Kusi. 30 Minutes with HR is a partnership program between KUSI Consulting and the Association of African Universities. I would like to acknowledge our sponsors, Hotel. We are actually here at the Executive Lounge at the Hotel. I would also like to acknowledge Adansi Travels. They have been very, very helpful in getting us to our shoot. And last but not least, I want to acknowledge Nationwide Medical Insurance. Be sure to give them a call for all of your healthcare insurance needs. Today, we are discussing the toll of redundancy on HR and employees. And when we come back, I will introduce you to our guest.
Welcome to Adansi Travels Product Knowledge Series. And I'm excited to talk to you about our FIT tour service, where you get the opportunity to customize the products to your taste. And with that, we take your details, your destination you want to go, the date you want to travel. We're able to do it to suit your budget. So you don't need to worry about breaking the bank when you are traveling with this kind of service. You can visit us as the details are on the screen as you see, or you can call us on the numbers showing on the screen. Let's plan your trip for you, and you know with Adansi, we always let you feel the beauty of life.
Adansi Travel feels life's beauty.
Hello, welcome back to 30 Minutes with HR, your premier human resource show for employers, employees, HR professionals, job seekers. Basically, anyone can watch this show and gain insights from it. Today, we are discussing the toll of redundancy on employers, employees, and also HR. And I am joined by Senyo M. Ejaben. Senyo is an author. He is a human resource and labor specialist, and he's also the founder of CAS LLC, which is it's a dispute resolution
A labor
firm.
and dispute resolution firm. Yes.
Okay, so welcome. It's actually not your first time on this show. This is your second time, right?
Yes, this is the second time.
At all. We are talking redundancy, which is a reduction in workforce. How have you actually get into the definition of redundancy?
So just as you've said, Rita, redundancy is basically a reduction of force, and it's a process where during the amalgamation, that is the joining of two their jobs. And so if the restructuring results in the loss of jobs, then we say that the workers have become redundant, and so the redundancy process must be followed. So generally that would be the general definition of what a redundancy process is.
Okay, thank you for that. So I think we don't talk about the issue of redundancy enough in this country, especially within the past year. I'm sure you are aware of the changes, the drastic changes that have been made in the finance sector, with all the closing down of some of the banks and also the savings and loans. Yeah, so can we talk a bit about that?
Sure. So in mergers and acquisitions, or in the liquidation of companies, one of the major issues that come up is either the integration of workers into the new entity, if it's workers or talent that would not be needed by the new entity. Of course, if a company is closing down, then it means that the workers would have to be exited. So the restructuring of only because it's quite difficult to find jobs these days, and so when people have to lose their jobs, it brings about a lot of social and financial issues. But having the legal procedures are followed so that their rights are fully enforced at them, but it's part of the process. And so another steps to reestablish themselves, etc., etc.
Okay. I think, with redundancies, unfortunately, I don't believe a lot of employers are honest, especially with mergers and acquisitions, right? When the company's being taken over, they do provide some false hope to employees and have them think that they may be moving forward with the organization. But let's be honest, I think everyone pretty much has their own agenda,
yes,
right? When it comes to business. When a company is being taken over, the chances of them bringing in their own people and laying off the staff of the older company, I think, is very high.
Yes.
Right? So that actually leads to a lot of people losing their jobs.
Exactly so. So this is a very important issue you've raised, because normally in mergers, acquisitions, or in the restructuring of companies, one of the communication strategy would be to first assure everybody that no employee is going to lose their jobs. Now, technically, that is not quite often the case, because when you merge two entities, the new entity would have a new identity, and that new identity may not need all the talent that the old entities had. So under the circumstances, even if there's a merger or acquisition, and the workers are assured that nobody will lose their job, that would be in the interim. But going forward, say between 12 to 24 months, there would definitely have to be a reduction in force to ensure that the new entity takes on the design and structure that it is set up for. Okay. Yeah, so it is always important for employees to know that once there is the announcement of a major acquisition, or of course if it's a liquidation, that one everybody knows they are going home. But if there's any form of restructuring, workers need to psychologically, be prepared that possibly they may be losing their jobs, so that they can start, planning and preparing the next line of their actions, more strategically, than to wait and sit and hope and then to be hit with the news within 24 hours that you will no longer be part of us. And that takes a toll on a lot of workers.
And I believe planning starts at the very beginning, right, upon entry, because let's be honest, no employment is permanent. Yeah. Most employment is at will. The employer can lay you off, regardless of whatever reason. However, what are some measures that an employee, when you're applying for a position, what can you do to maybe cover yourself in the case of redundancies? Are there certain questions you can ask? Is there certain clause that you should look for in the employee manual and your offer letter? How do they protect themselves at the very early stage?
So let's walk through the redundancy process. And I always tell prospective employees and also the employed, those who are in employment, that once you walk into the door of an organization, you have to know that at some point you're going to walk out, even if it is upon retirement. And so the exit from an organization is something that every employee should look out for and also prepare for. So what happens during a redundancy, in accordance with the labor law, is that first of all, any employer who contemplates restructuring or amalgamation or even liquidating or insolvency, where workers are most likely to lose their jobs, would have to give to the chief labor officer 3 months notice in writing prior to the date of the effective date of the exercise. Wow. If there's a union, the law also says that the union should be given same notice. The law doesn't mention employees specifically, but on the ground, if there's no union, employees are supposed to be communicated with or information shared with employees. So the law allows that then if there's no union, employees as a group or the group of people who will be affected or the entire workforce should be updated on the going-ons of the company, which probably may lead to the loss of jobs and redundancy. So there's a 3 months window, which is really important. Let me explain this a bit because it's important.
Please do.
Normally, a lot of practitioners think that the 3 months notice for redundancy is actually a termination notice. It's not. It's a consultative notice. It's a notice that says that in 3 months this might happen, so let's start talking. So the clauses, the termination clauses in a contract of employment still exist and still is enforceable under the circumstances of redundancy. That's the first one. Good. So beyond that, then within the consultative notice period, the employer is supposed to share information on possibly the number of positions and jobs that are going to be affected, the number of workers that are going to be affected in the various classes, from which departments. Information they also have to share is what led to the decision to lay off workers or to restructure, and what the impact would be on the various employees. And then most importantly, what a lot of people do not normally bring their minds to bear on is the issue of the fact that the law requires the employer to assist the workers who would be impacted to mitigate the impact of the redundancy exercise. For example, by giving them training to be able to be abreast with new talent acquisition, employable skills, and those other trainings. And then also to take them through processes that helps them to deal with the job loss psychologically and emotionally. And then also possibly to help the employees reach out to other similar organizations in industry to employ them. So that where another organization may be looking for that kind of talent that is being lost, then the employer can reach out to those organizations to help the employees to get new jobs.
Wow.
But these aspects of the law often are not enforced, they are not applied accordingly. But that is why these discussions are good, and they have to be going on, so that someone must try and help enforce those aspects of the law.
Wow.
Okay, so beyond the consultative period is also the issue of negotiation. The law requires that the redundancy pay or severance pay is compensation that should be paid to the worker that loses the job during a redundancy exercise. And this severance pay is negotiable. In other jurisdictions, their laws prescribe specifically what amount of money or how much money as compensation should be paid to a redundant worker. Our law does not do that. Our law leaves the door open for negotiation, and there's a reason for that. During redundancies, all organizations are not the same in terms of their financial capacity. So they negotiate on all those number of factors so that they can come to a conclusion that best fits and is custom to the situation or the reality on the ground.
Which I think is fair, right? Because again, not every organization has the same amount of resources.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the problem that creates is the issue of disagreement. Once an employee is losing their job, they are hurt and they are emotionally very charged. So often they are not rational in terms of their emotional stability. So they tend to be difficult negotiators under those circumstances. The employer also would be battling with issues of finances, because if the finances of the company was good, everything was okay, then restructuring would not be necessary, or redundancy or insolvency or liquidation and all of those things would not be necessary. So then it becomes a tag.
It's very tough.
Yeah, and so the law says that negotiate. However, the window of opportunity is provided by the law, where it says where the parties are not able to agree, then they have to turn to the National Labour Commission to help them use ADR processes like mediation, arbitration, and also facilitation to help the parties to agree on a specific redundancy package. But not every employee that goes through a redundancy process is entitled to a package.
I was going to ask you that.
The law says that where an employee suffers diminution, that means that, for example, if there's a measure and the employee's pay and allowances and benefits are all the same, the employee does not suffer any losses in their old pay. Okay, so under those circumstances, they are not entitled to any compensation. It is only when they suffer a loss of the job, or if they're moving into another job within the restructuring process or another job position, and they lose any of the benefits, then that is liable to an entitlement to the redundancy pay, which is the compensation for the loss of those benefits or the job.
Okay. That was a lot of information you just shared. That was loaded, so thank you very much. I just want to bring it back to the negotiation process. I believe a lot in setting HR policies, right? Especially at the onset of any organization. I just did a workshop a couple of days ago on that. So with regards to negotiations, is that something the employer can do at the just to avoid conflict? Can they do that at the very beginning when they are hiring an employee? Can they set that policy in place so that the employee knows from early on that, you know what, if I am to be laid off, this is the package that I would be presented, so that it doesn't become, you know, an issue of conflicts later on?
Yes, there's there are two schools of thought on that, and there's been a lot of debate since 2005, when the law was actually, it was passed in 2003, but because the National Labour Commission was established in 2005, that is when we started really seeing the law in action. So a lot of debate has been around this. The first school of thought is that why don't you predetermine the rate, the rate of pay of the redundancy, so that by the time of redundancy, at least everybody knows what is going. You avoid all. You would have even
prepared and planned and put the money aside just in case,
exactly.
Right?
Then the second school of thought is that, well, when the redundancy hits, because nobody can really predict the future, you may find it difficult to pay what you have predetermined. And then what happens? It creates more disputes. So it is just good that per the law, when the time comes, you negotiate. I am more in tuned to the first approach, where the whole package is predetermined.
Exactly.
If it is predetermined, normally would advise employers that then they can, in their financials, provide
for it.
They can provide for it, so that they always have a fund available for such purposes that they can use for. Now, under those circumstances, it is very easy to establish. You know, organizations that do well are organizations that plan. So to handle redundancy processes, it's all in the planning. When we establish an organization, we know that when employees come, because times change and situations change and the environment changes in terms of business environment, redundancies are inevitable. They are basically a part of every life cycle of an organization. So it is important that organizational leaders plan for these redundancies, so that when they occur, they can easily step up to it and then handle it more effectively.
Okay. Thank you so much. We will be right back, actually, and I obviously have more questions. You know, this is a topic that I feel needs to be discussed often, especially because of the times that we're in. So we'll be right back with more conversation about redundancy and the toll it has on HR, employers, and employees. So stay tuned.
Treat yourself to a serene, plush, and unique experience. Check in at the AH Hotel, East Legon, where every stay is unique. Everybody wants to be the best at what they do for the people they're doing it for. That's why, after 13 years of providing you with top-notch healthcare nationwide, the market leader in the private health insurance industry is going the extra mile for you. Instead of hopping from pharmacy to pharmacy, now you get your prescription drugs delivered straight to your doorstep. We will restock your chronic medication on the regular, so you don't have to stress to keep track. We provide on-site clinics that offers you professional medical consultation from the comfort of your office. Enjoy these amazing benefits and so much more by signing on to Nationwide Medical Insurance today. Call us on 0800 222 222 or email us at info@nationwidemh.com. Nationwide, we go the extra mile so you don't have to. Join the healthcare family.
Welcome back to 30 Minutes with HR, your premier human resource show for employers, employees, job seekers, and everyone. I believe this is an insightful show for everyone to watch, actually. Again, thank you to our sponsors, Hotel. We are here live at the Executive Lounge. Thank you for Dunster Travels for transporting us. And also, thank you to Nationwide Medical Insurance. Be sure to give them a call for all of your healthcare medical needs, all right? We are back discussing the toll of redundancy on HR, employers, and employees, and I'm joined by Senyo M. Ejabeng. So Senyo, I mean, you were just sharing a lot of insights before we went on break. What I would like to know, and what I'm sure a lot of the people watching would like to know as well, is with the recent changes to the finance sector, with the redundancies that have occurred within the past year, is there something that you think HR could have done? Is there a role that HR could have played to make sure that this didn't occur?
Well, yes, but if it's about stopping or stopping or preventing the job losses, I don't think that that would have been possible. But in terms of guiding the organizations to handle the process a lot more effectively, yes, that would be the role of HR in handling of mergers and acquisitions and liquidations. The role of HR is key because when you merge two companies, you have to integrate not only the operational aspect of the business, but the people as well. And when it comes to integrating the people, you are integrating their benefits, you are integrating culture, and you're also integrating conduct generally. So under the circumstances, HRM should have a huge role to play in helping the organization to, one, communicate effectively, and also two, to comply with the dictates of law as required by legal processes or fair procedure. And then thirdly, to advise on the best way of mitigating the impact of the job losses. So under the circumstance, we can look at the recent financial sector reforms, and I think that communication could have been handled a bit better, because when communication is not handled well internally, then you find a lot of external communication in the media. That there are a lot of organizations, or that a lot of cases where mergers and acquisitions have occurred, but there was not that much brouhaha in the media. Exactly. So communication of the process to workers and all other stakeholders, action planning or joint action planning, joint consultations, very, very important in these processes. And I think that these are some of the things that HRM can lead and support the organization with whenever such things occur.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. You know, I think communication is actually, it's critical, I think, in a lot of instances, especially with HR, engaging employees and being able to communicate effectively with them. one of the toughest things I've ever had to do in my HR career is actually lay off. But not just that, but like I literally had to lay off friends. So in that instance, I mean, can you imagine the sleepless nights, the plan and the thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Are we still going to be friends after this? How do I get them to understand my position? We talk a lot about the role of redundancy on employees, which of course is natural because they have the most to lose.
Yeah.
However, let's talk about the toll it takes on HR professionals as well.
So let me sit well.
Please sit well.
This is the crunch of the matter. Because a lot of people overlook the toll of such processes on the HRM practitioner. Under the circumstances, an HRM practitioner is normally under double the pressure that both the employee and the employer would be under, because both employees and employers would bring their pressures down to bear on the HR practitioner. So, and normally everybody thinks that an HR practitioner is supposed to be okay. Everybody runs to HR with their problems. But who takes care of the HR practitioner? So it's an important aspect of this that you've raised. HR practitioners will often be under pressure from the employees because they are losing their jobs. And I know examples where HR practitioners who normally are the face of the redundancy exercises become a target of some of the employees and sometimes are threatened, including death threats and also threats of spiritual harm, etc., etc. Then on the other side, the employer would also be giving HRM pressure to get the process done with, given timelines and all that based on which the performance of the HRM person is going to be measured. So what I normally would advise HRM people is that they should not take on the entire responsibility of shouldering and driving the redundancy process. They should always bring on board an expert, consultant, and a team of advisors to partner with the organization and help them go through the process. Under those circumstances, these consultants and experts would normally soak in some of the pressure for which would have been taken by the HRM person. So it is not only about maybe losing money or paying expert advice for, or paying experts or advisors for such processes, but it's also a strategy to make sure that after the process, everything goes on smoothly, the organization returns back to normal, and also is re-engineered to be able to perform as though nothing happened. But when this is not done, there are a lot of insecurities that become the residue of the process, and then that becomes an Achilles heel that may mitigate against the performance of the organization and also the internal relationships. You know, in mergers and acquisition and redundancy processes, the aftermath of the process and how the organization copes is important. And most especially how the security or the insecurities of the, let me put it this way, the mitigation of the insecurities of the workers who remain. For them to be able to now be loyal and fully engaged to continue with their work, and therefore driving performance in the organization is very important. Because if that does not happen, and through the process there are a lot of antagonism and fights and disputes, and those are not resolved properly, then going forward the organization starts to limp instead of running.
I love that you brought that up, right? Because it's not just, when we talk about employees being affected, it's not just the employees who are facing redundancy that are being affected.
Yes.
The co-workers as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you manage that relationship? You know, yeah, you lose hope, you become nervous, you become fearful of your job.
Job security becomes a problem.
And it also takes a toll on the employer as well, because if people are feeling this way, you better believe they're probably looking for a way out of your organization. You know, so that affects turnover as well. Interesting. So I think we've literally hit on so many points in this conversation, and what I'm gathering from it all is that everyone has a role to play when it comes to redundancy, right? Obviously, you, the employee, I always tell employees, make sure you read the fine print, get your employee manual. If you have any questions, ask questions, right? Because you have to also know how to protect yourself from facing any redundancy.
Exactly.
Right? So ask these questions, have these conversations even before you start. And obviously, HR has to make sure that they are keeping up to brush with the laws and the rules, and they are having these conversations. They are literally planning ahead. The organization also has to be planning ahead in case anything happens, because anything can happen.
Sure.
You know, I'm sure the companies that were closed down last year and this year alone, they probably didn't see it coming, and it happened. So how do you plan? How do you make sure that you are ready? And is there even a right way to even to lay people off?
Well, yes, there's certainly a right way and a wrong way. But for the employee, every employee needs, like I said at the beginning, every employee needs to know that once they walk in, there's a possibility of walking out. So if you ask me, I would say that every employee should make sure that they have a primary job and a secondary job, and possibly a tertiary job. So they spread their skills around and make sure that when they lose the primary source of income, they can have some temporary, forms of income to lay on before looking for maybe other major jobs, and so there must be a backup for employment under all circumstances while an employee is engaged with an employer, because anything can happen.
Exactly.
For the employers, it's basically about making sure that they are compliant, they have the best advice available. They do not go through the process without advice, legal advice, technical advice. And then they also make sure that they are financially prepared at all times. So now redundancy is something that organizations should provide for. Once they do that, the stress of financing the process is reduced, because redundancy is an expensive process, especially in terms of payment of the packages and so on. And for the HR practitioner, it's important to be abreast with the contemporary issues that continue to come up regarding this area of practice. So they have to be abreast with case law, that is the pronouncements of the courts on disputes regarding these. They have to be abreast with the areas of the law that we are talking about, through to how disputes are resolved when redundancy exercises are done, as well as generally being on top of what should be done and leading the organization to go through the process without any hitches and as smoothly as possible, managing the communication process with the workers and so on. So is there a bad way of doing it? Yes, and oftentimes when I do a detailed study on specific redundancy exercises that I've done, the bottom line often would be a gap in the communication. So the workers normally are not well informed, and because of that, a lot of rumors come up, and then the process becomes difficult. Then also, when the workers are agitated how they are engaged is also another level of communication skills that HR people must show. So for me, communication is key, as we have said. Then the wrong way of doing it is not following the law and not following due process. Under those circumstances, you find that the employees most definitely will come to practitioners like us, consultants, who would then file complaints on behalf of the workers, or the workers will find themselves to court or the Labour Commission themselves, and then the whole process now starts becoming very murky. So there's definitely wrong ways of doing it, but the best is to make sure that we are compliant and we have the necessary advice.
Excellent. And you mentioned something that also struck me, you know, and that is establishing partnerships or relationships with other business entities.
Yes.
Because when you have to lay people off, but you must accommodate them and make sure that they find employment,
Yes.
who will you turn to?
Yes.
You know, so I think businesses, rather than looking at those within our sector as competitors all the time, maybe we should look to them as, hey, partners, let's establish some, just in case, you know, if things don't work out for my business and I have to close down or lay employees off, at least I can give, you know, my colleagues.
And also another very helpful pool of stakeholders are suppliers of the business.
Yes.
So
Vendors.
if you have very good suppliers, you can roll over one or two workers to these suppliers, so that at least you mitigate the numbers a bit, so that if maybe it's 1,000 people going home, if you can do about 50 or 60% of those kind of mitigation, that would be perfect.
And I think especially for HR, it's very important, right, to establish relationships with other HR professionals.
Exactly.
They are the ones that do the hiring,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
this is definitely a message to HR. Be sure to establish partnerships with other HR professionals to help you, you know, through that process. But this has been a very good conversation, and I just felt it was so needed. We needed to talk about this. We needed to have this discussion and provide this insight, you know, not just for employees, but for employers and also for HR professionals.
And policymakers.
And policymakers as well, exactly. You know, we need to, I think, start thinking, times have changed. Things are changing, so how do we keep up with our policies? But I do hope there's a change where maybe employers will have the option to put in place any redundancy clause or policies ahead of time before hiring the employees, to kind of help them so that it doesn't become an issue. Because I think it becomes more of an issue at the end, because everybody's so tense, there's so much pressure, and now you want to start negotiating redundancy pay. I don't think that's the best idea, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
So now, here's a bit of the fun part. I know you're usually Mr. Friendly. You are like, you know, in our HR group, you're a superstar. You're a superstar in HR, you know
really?
that, right?
I didn't know that.
Well, now you know. Now you know. And I would like to share with our viewers that Senyo has actually published a book. So can you tell us where we can get copies, and can you tell us a bit about what the book is about?
So the book is titled Career Toolkit for Successful Job Hunting. I think that it's a very good book, not because I wrote it, but because of the content. It handles job search from a different point of view, where you have information on how to actually plan and search for the job, how to prepare and get the job in terms of interviews and all that. And after you are done, I think it's one of the books that would tell you what should go into a contract of employment and what you should expect from a contract of employment and how you can negotiate a contract of employment. So that is basically the scope of the book. And it's currently at Legon Bookshop and also Vide Bookstore in Osu.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. Thank you. I hope you go and pick up your copy of this book, because he is an HR expert. So if you get this book, I'm sure it'll be able to really help you with all of your HR needs, getting that job especially. All right. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the viewers? Where can they find you? Maybe other services that you offer that they can tap into?
Basically, mergers and acquisitions is, and especially the HR component, the employee relations component of mergers and acquisitions is one of the things I do very well. It's one of my niche areas.
Yeah.
So yes, if anybody needs information, further information on mergers and acquisitions, they can always go online. Just Google my name, Senyo Emajabeng, and a lot of my contacts and everything would. I'm very, very easy to find online,
okay.
and so they can always contact me online, and I'll be available to offer them any advice and also guidance that they need.
And you're also always very willing and just so helpful. You know, I think in the HR space, you're just that go-to guy. I think we're even planning a session with you, registering services, where you're going to be teaching us.
Yes, that's pro bono. I practice HRM with passion. I find that it's an area of our lives. We all have too many problems, then our lives become problematic, and we are not healthy. And also we're not able to fully achieve our capabilities and our usefulness of our talents and gifts. So it's a passionate thing for me to be able to share knowledge and advice and build the capacity of people in this area of practice that seems to have a lot of problems in our part of the world.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, it definitely comes across that way. So thank you very much to even come on again a second time. So now the third time we have to have Senyo back, right? You're just quite knowledgeable, so I really do appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you.
And I'm sure everyone watching appreciates having you on as well. So
thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of 30 Minutes with HR. Again, thank you to our sponsors, AAU.